Okay, then we are with another episode of Climate Cafe. Today with Dong, with a very interesting topic, but maybe for people that are quite new, what are we doing, Sydney, for 5 years long?
For
What is
over
this?
five for over 5 years long,
Over.
we are
Yeah.
we're talking about green blue infrastructure. All started with the bioswales and some research that we both did. And then over the years, we talked about a lot of different topics, from floating cities to dikes, flower dikes, biodiversity monitoring, management, participation by individuals, um, and many topics like that. And now we have another very, very interesting topic. I think it's one of my favorites because I'm working at the municipality, and some usually the technical stuff is figured out, or we know that it's possible, but then it all comes down to the decision making. So I won't tell too much about that, but yeah, I think it's going to be interesting. So I'm really nice that I can see you here. Yeah. All
Yeah.
right. What do we do? Do you have another introduction for our speaker?
I think that was actually a great introduction. So, Dong, if
Well,
you want to share your presentation,
yeah,
that will be
just talk a
great.
bit. Yeah, just introduce yourself for a bit and go ahead.
Sure,
So,
I'll do that. And thank you, Cindy, for this grand floor. Now talking, I don't know how much you know my PowerPoint. Now I'm nervous, which I wasn't before. It's like, yeah, it's indeed. I'm going to talk about the stormwater governance and the management in general, but I'm not sure it's going to become your favorite one later, but let's figure that out. So in short, this is a long title. Thanks anyway for inviting me today. So I'm gonna do this recycle of my PowerPoint that I did for my PhD defense. As you can see, it's really long title towards holistic, multifunctional, and sustainable stormwater management and how to make sense of the criteria, indicator, and evidence. So in short, it's stormwater decisions for decision makers. And my name is Don. I'm a newly graduated PhD from Swedish University of Agricultural Science. And this whole PhD work is supervised by two of my supervisors from SLU and two of them from the LTU, Luleå Technical University, the technical crew. So this is quite interdisciplinary in a way, and also transdisciplinary. I would say we work a lot with municipality actors. So shall I start?
yeah, the floor is yours.
Cool. So I don't know how many of you know about the stormwater works, but as Sydney said, I think I'm just gonna really briefly say that. Usually this is how I do the very kind of start the background, the why, why we do this holistic, multifunctional, and sustainable stormwater management. This is simplified graphs, which I did from Malmo perspective. So you can see here when it rains, some evaporates, infiltrates, or become runoff. And for the flow, as Sydney mentioned earlier, and the loads and pipes, our field is really strong, and with the state-of-the-art modeling and the simulations. But in these existing areas, the underground system is quite often old in Sweden and close to its limits. So the surface is kind of full physically, economically, institutionally, or politically, socially. You can name more. You can even name culturally, kind of complicated. So if you rinse more or if you rinse differently, it is not just a hydrological question. It becomes the kind of the city question, the decision questions. What do we prioritize? What do we do? The trade-offs. Who owns the responsibility on what? So this is where the holistic and multifunctional and sustainable start to surface, kind of guiding how we think, how we design, and why we act. And one of the mainstream response, I know all of you know well, this is, in this urban setting is a sustainable stormwater management. Well, simply put, is to kind of the transition from public way towards treating stormwater as a socio-ecological resource and a planning opportunity for long-term livable places. So different regions, for example, using different terms for this type of transition, LID, SATs, smart city, etc. So in my thesis or in my PhD, I use sustainable stormwater management as an umbrella term, linking hydrological performance with the ecological function and the social value And the heart of this transition lays the nature-based solution or blue-green infrastructures. Depends on where you come from, the domains. So there, the solutions are used to mimic or nature process to manage stormwater on the surface and on site. So they are highlighted by, you can name a couple of international bodies like UN IPCC to meet the SDGs or climate adaptation. So in stormwater management, they expect to deliver functions such as treatment, like rain gardens, conveyance bioswales, and infiltration, and the retention detention, such as dry pond or kind of constructed wetland. And on top of these technical functions, we also expect these solutions to deliver multiple values and benefits. For example, improve air quality, reduce heat and noise, support biodiversity, offer amenity and the recreational value, even create kind of green jobs and new governance structures. So this is why the expectation and ambition is often framed as holistic, multifunctional, and sustainable, but it also multiply the trade-offs. So the decisions are no longer technical and economical environmental. It will involve more different actors. And to make it a little bit concrete, I will kind of move to the case studies I used in my PhD. So here are two Swedish cities, two everyday stormwater spaces, I like to call them. I used selected with our partner from the LTU and the regional water utility company here in Momo and Östersund municipalities. These two cities have similar policy and ambitions for this transition to holistic and multifunctional sustainable stormwater management, but they differ slightly in climate. One set up in the very north of Sweden, Östersund, and one is sitting very, very down south in Momo, close to Copenhagen. And spatially, they're very different. Momo is quite flat, and the Östersund is quite in the slopey area, and the institutional condition is also different. So in short, the Momo case study is representing the inner city context with a very, very contested public space, municipal departments, and the regional utility companies jointly managing the stormwater. And Östersund, up in the north, represents a residential suburban kind of case studies where the governance structure are more like in-house. So when the stormwater management is moved from the pipes onto the shared surface, how it will look like. So I'm gonna zoom in to this inner city case study. So this figure shows the catchment. I think all of you kind of very familiar with this type of GIS kind of graphs, shows the layout and the potential kind of nature-based solution configurations. For example, can you see the laser point? So this is kind of based on the Lulio. So this could be the bioretention facilities, and these are kind of rain gardens, and we also have the stormwater trip pits, designed. Kind of as the system, they call it engineered decentralized system. So this is to help us understand where these solutions, such as the nature-based configurations, could work hydrologically, technically under ideal situation. But my research focusing on often what we said, the background, so the governance conditions. So here I kind of use the CAD to kind of make it 3D to show you where this kind of nature-based solution can sit. The pink part, represents the kind of the private house. So here we talk about the governance, of course, the governance condition, which sits behind the background. So in our or in my PhD, governance is understood as institutional and relational and the deliverable conditions that shape, support, and justify the stormwater decisions. So who are these actors? We can see, take a little peek. I'm going to come back to this slide later. So this is a rain garden, for example. And if we put the governance, we know actually they're owned by the private owners and the house association here in Sweden. They kind of the joint organization within the department. And then we have, for example, for the stormwater trip pits, they're owned by the property and street office from the municipality. And then we have, for example, the bioretention, which was planted in the public square, is owned also by the public and street office, but however, is end users is public, the general public. And the restaurant owners, you can see these yellow dots are or small business. They have the right of use, via outdoor seating permit and the kind of upkeep of the daily management. So this is kind of the snapshot of the governance that usually sits in the background. And these actors are often, to be honest, the real actors that decide what's to get planned, built, and maintained, or even sustained. So the problem is that on the ambition side, we talk about the holistic, multifunctional, and sustainable stormwater management, especially using nature-based solutions. But on the assessment side, decisions for these solutions are still rely heavily. Wait, I'm gonna close it down. Rely heavily on what is easily to quantify, flows, loads, costs, and the criteria and the indicators of this evidence are usually limited, justified. Let's see, I'm gonna remove this one. So the criteria and the indicators for assessing these nature-based solutions are often used with limited justification and without being contextualized. Some of the figures or kind of the parameters can be borrowed from the US condition and used in the Swedish context. And moreover, as I mentioned, the governance and social conditions are often treated as background, non-accessible decision conditions. So within this type of problem, my PhD aim was to understand how governance and context are handled in decisions for stormwater in existing urban areas. I answered this through three connected studies. The first one is to ask what type of decision support tools are used for assessment and what type of governance this tool reflect. And then what factor has shaped the stormwater work so far, and which of these are kind of decisive for future in study 2. And then we move the study 2 to study 3 to see whether these indicators or factors make sense when they're interpreted in the real catchments under real governance context. So I'm gonna, for the later part, I'm gonna walk you briefly through these 3 papers. But before that, I need to kind of answer this question to show the methods we used. It's actually the sequential method design was used. So in paper 1, systematic literature review was conducted to look at the state of the art decision support tools used for sustainability assessment from the global scale. So we used the PRISM approach and the policy arrangement model as an analytical framework. And then in paper 2, a semi-structured interview guided by transition theory, multi-level perspective, was used to understand the decisive factor from the past, starting from the 1960s. And then the best worth methodology, also developed in Delft, was used in a workshop to understand which of these factors are going to be decisive for future sustainable stormwater management. And then the last study was to use we used the expert survey to make sense of these indicators in concrete catchment through the expert survey. So let's zoom into the paper 1. I'll do very quickly about what type of what these studies have shown. So paper 1 is to systematic review for sustainability assessment to see how the state-of-the-art tools are used. But before that, I'd like to brief a little bit about the terms. I think I talked a lot about the sustainability assessment. So sustainability assessment is originally from the environmental impact assessment and widely used in stormwater management to assess the performance or strategy of nature-based solutions, or the benefits and values, and also the feasibility. And this is often done with the decision support tools. They can be methods, techniques, programs, and frameworks that empower the decision-making by analyzing complex data. So what are these tools we have found out globally? So now you can see the results. We have, based on literature, it's a little bit small. I'll walk you through since, in my defense, I have a bigger screen, so everything is enlarged. And so 11 type of decision support tools are being identified. Among them, multi-criteria analysis, of course, stand out as the most common tools. That is the approach to allow the decision maker to assess multiple criteria at once, and it then goes to the cost-benefit analysis. It's also kind of widely used when the focus is on the financial performance. So what criteria are used for these tools? So compared to easily 20 or 30 criteria, finding technical dimension, environmental dimensions, only 7 kind of recurring social criteria showed up, and they're often used as add-ons. So the interesting part here, I usually like to use this as example, is like, for example, the indicator the parameter for indicator and health and the environmental justice in the social dimension. The indicator is called distance to the nearest green spaces or nature-based social output. And you see here is like one indicator has the same parameters, can be used to different type of criteria in the social dimension. And then we have a PM 2.5, is also used as one of the famous indicators, or it could be PM 10. But it was used in one study as the environmental criteria, but also in another in another kind of study, exactly the same PM 2.5 is used as the social criteria. And I can go on and on. This is a very interesting part of the work. For example, the education value is the number of the school visits per year. So this kind of telling us something that indicator selection are rarely justified, even in this published research articles. But I'm going to come back to this later even more. So let's take a look at the governance side. So we use the policy arrangement model as a length to find out what kind of governance elements has been contained in the decision support. So from the discourse side, most of the assessment are focusing on the stormwater quantity or stormwater quality, or some of them are focusing on both, but the rules and the resources are rarely addressed. The interesting part here is actor. Most studies do address actor, namely government, utility, experts, but assuming them as automatically the decision maker or the beneficiaries. Usually they were being addressed in the future work or recommendation section. So the decision support used in the assessment was not even for planning, was not even together with this kind of actors they wanted to mention. So even that, the owner and end users are seldom included in the decision making. So this brings to the question to move away from the research community to the real world. Now we have to understand what conditions do practitioners in Sweden or in general do they see as decisive for transition in real world cities. Therefore, with that in mind, the study 2 was carried out. So this study first taken ex post perspective. We traced stormwater management from the 1960s to today in 2 Swedish cities. I briefly showed earlier, one in Malmö, one in Östersund, to explore the factors that drive the stormwater transition. And then this study takes ex ante perspective to ask what practitioners see as a decisive for future. So let's take a look at the results. Also, again, it's very small. So we have identified 40 sub-factors that shape the stormwater management over time. And these factors kind of cover very large range of domains, such as knowledge sharing, in-house expertise, long-term monitoring, and the system flexibility, etc. If you have any question regarding these 40 factors, I'm happy to provide any additional, but the overall point is like, after identify this 40 factors, we then use the semantic analysis to group them. For example, anything related to costs, fees, tax, or budget, or even fundings was grounded kind of under the financial resources. So in the end, we got 9 key factors in the past and present for the stormwater transition. They're namely policy, rules, legislation, technical innovation and adaptation, societal dynamics, organizational capacity, which is set inside of the municipality, and external collaboration, which means collaboration between the municipality departments, and the land use, long-term integration, financial resources, and the multifunctionality. And then we want to ask the same group of participants, how do they prioritize them? What do you think from the past and the present will still affect the future? So which of them will matter most for future? So to answer that, we conducted a workshop with the same participant group. I have to admit, and also always like to say that, it's like we were really surprising our author team because, based on the interview and analysis, we were expecting long-term integration, organizational capacity to pop out as the top prioritized factors. But the workshop results was different, as you can see here. Yes, external collaboration ranked as the most decisive factor based on the participants, and also we have the after workshop consensus kind of discussion, so that lasts actually 2 hours. to confirm, do they really mean what they are actually rating for? It was kind of positive answer that they were certainly sure the external collaboration is one of the most important part for future sustainable stormwater management. So what this study is telling us, taken together, it confirms that stormwater management, especially sustainable stormwater management, is a complex issue. So we need to see these factors or the indicators, whatever, behind them in a very systematic manner. So first of all, the factors are interdependent. The workshop, as I said earlier, we have the consensus discussion after. The result is a good, the discussion is kind of good example. So if you notice or not, the technical innovation and adaptation was ranked lowest in the workshop. But based on the workshop consensus, the participant told us that doesn't mean the technical innovation and adaptation is unimportant. They only confirmed that it's about the independence. They told us without the policy, coordination, fundings, or clear responsibilities, innovation tend to remain as pilots. They have tons of examples showing that those pilots actually never reach to the end or being upscaled. So it becomes hard to maintain. Nobody knows how to maintain. And therefore, these factors are interdependent. They are not saying the technology is unimportant, but they're saying that all the factors behind it are kind of driven and we should see it in a systematic way. And again, these factors, especially the governance and institutional related ones, they do not behave like fixed barriers or drivers. They're very, very dynamic. Their importance shifts or decisiveness shifts across space, time, and the stakeholder interests. So what was decisive in the 80s maybe carry less weighting today, and what is decisive in Momo may look differently as shown. And we have concrete examples in the papers to show that how they prioritize different things. So, and what is exactly this is kind of the motivation for us to understand, to carry out the study 3. How do we interpret these indicators in real catchment? So now we know the decisiveness, we need to know how relevant they are and how feasible they are to implement in the decision making, especially in the assessment. So study 3 asks a simple question: when indicators are placed in the real catchment study, do they still make sense? And are they still useful? And before the survey, of course, a concrete contest, which I showed earlier, was provided. As you can see, again, this catchment configuration. So this is to show the rain gardens and what type of nature-based solution configuration was designed for this catchment. And then we visualized, this is actually the contest we provided before the survey. So we have to show the participants what they're actually rating against these indicators for. So this is a contest of seers we provided. And then we visualized this kind of nature-based solutions, like architecture consultant, that, okay, to show them, okay, this is actually how it looks like when implemented together with, what type of nature-based solution we're actually planning in this catchment. So the participants, especially from the municipality, they're very familiar with this type of work. So they have a first grasp. Okay, now this is what we're talking about. We're talking about the rain gardens in this private courtyard. And of course, we add the governance layers. So we tell the participants some of the indicators are institutional governance related. So when we mention governance, we mean maintenance plan and the design and construction, for example, and also the actors behind it. This rain garden by design, it sits in this private courtyard. So naturally, we will deal with the private owners, and the same exactly type of rain gardens in Australian case is sitting in the schoolyard. So it's a different kind of actor constellation behind each type of phase. So this kind of the whole thing is to show the governance aware context of seers. So the survey participants, again, asked to judge the indicators using this relevance. Does it matter here, the indicator, one of the indicator, or how feasible it is? So we have a couple of results, but I think the most interesting one, also the key output implication of the study, is to show this kind of categorical sense-making output. So this is matrix that's simply one job. you demonstrate the sense-making step I used in the title, how to make sense of the indicators. So it is not about ranking, it is just indicator screening logic. So you can see here how to read it, interpret it. It's like we have 40 factors, right? We adopted these 40 factors from the study too. So based on this kind of sense-making survey, and then the top right, you can see here, it's a high relevance and high resources. So this can be read as ready to be used indicators in this decision context settings we have provided. And then the top left, you can see here, this is the interesting part. So the marks indicators are respondents or participants that are very, very relevant, but lack of resource, mandates, budgets, knowledge to act on. So here resource uncertainty is strongest for indicators tend to, for example, you can see here organizational capacity in inner cities or external collaborations in residential. They also reflect kind of the, we call it a little bit different in the city case. So you can see that's why we have two cases, so on and so on. So the bottom right, you can see here the low relevance and high resources. So these are measurable yet not relevant for this type of decision context. And also depends on the case or depends on the city, they vary a little bit. And the last one is, this is the lowest, which means they're not maybe not important in this decision context to be used to assess this type of nature-based solution. But if we change the nature-based solution for different type of configuration, the indicator may shift. So this whole thing is to show that this is screening logic, how we select indicators instead of kind of looking indicator from literature review or from other kind of previous project, they use that indicators, let's use it. So we think adding this is quite important. And also makes sense to us how we should select. So now I step back and summarize the three studies. So study one, we found that the gaps in the existing research, especially in the assessment research with the decision support tools. And the study two, we show that what practitioners says matters and from the past and future. And then study three, move to the upstream of the decision making to make sense of what matters in real catchment if we're going to do assessment or decision making with the indicators. But of course, as every studies has a limitation. So here's the limitation part of my study. So paper one is a systematic review, but it only reflects what is published and used in research, state-of-the-art decision support tools in research, not fully range of tools used in actual cities. And we know there are many kind of decision support tool exists there, but it's really hard under the certain period of time. You have to collect both the gray literature review and the systematic review. So this is one of the limitations. So paper two is grounded in two Swedish cities with a professional-oriented ground because we were not very satisfied from the research perspective. We moved to the practitioner, but then they're actually the most willing to interact with the researchers. So we cannot jump directly to the end users. And therefore, the end user was not included in study two. And paper three, the study three is exploratory screening study. So into catchment with everyday use scenario, we didn't use extreme rain events to test the indicators. And also with a very small survey sample. So the screening is more demonstrative rather than statistically representative. And the thesis level, the focus is on the upper string of the assessment on the indicator sense making. So of course, the next steps are first, we have to explore the indicators with end user and private actors more, both for the parameter, both for the description. So we have to see how these indicators can be more feasible and robust if we start engage with end users and other private actors or could be the organizations, and to see if we need to enlarge the indicator inventories or kind of shorten or even condense them. And the next one, of course, we have to develop the parameters for the indicators and try to develop with a quantitative or either quantitative or quantitative manner, and explore the normalization methods if they're integrated into the decision-ready evidence, especially for nature multi-criteria analysis. There's usually a common step in the decision-making that you have to normalize all the indicators, both quantitative ones and qualitative ones, and this need to be further explored how to do that. And of course, the next step is to apply in the real assessment projects, probably with the cities or with the municipalities. We have to try the sustainability assessment with this new setup of indicators, how they will work in the decision making. And the last is to transform into other impact assessment contests, such as risk assessment with extreme rain events, and also to test these indicators in the ex-post assessments. For those kind of already built or field project in the archive in the corner in the municipality, we have to understand what failed them and what didn't carry out, and what is missing compared to our indicators shall be included or not. So it's quite we're kind of in the inventory stage of the research on this. Oh, now it's the end. Thank you for listening. Any questions?
Yeah. Sudden end. Very good. Thanks, Dr. Dong. Absolutely. Yeah, I will be a bit quiet, of course. I have the thesis here, and I had the opportunity to already ask questions for an hour. So maybe anyone else?
Well, first of all, let me say, nice presentation, really cool, really clear, nice topic, and that's, I think you really hit the right spot there, because we're always talking about, if we're talking about decision making with the municipalities here in the Netherlands, they're always asking like, you know, what criteria we use, and then it's what indicators should we use for a product, and then it's really like, yeah, that's the question, and a lot of eyebrows go up, like, what do you mean? But I really like that the question from which indicators are applicable to a project is the question needs to be asked every time over and over again, and I think that's something you really show here quite well, and still make the story a bit more clear, like because you did indicate indicators that are usable in multiple cases. However, every time they're different. So that wasn't really a question. That's just really a remark. That's I'm really happy with this, because we're always talking about how to approach this problem, and municipalities really don't have many tools or many literature to go by. They're always, as we say it in the Netherlands, inventing the wheel again, and then don't have enough capacity, which is one of the indicators, and then they drop it. So
Yeah.
you really hit the spot, and I think your results really reflect what I experienced in the field.
Thank you, Sydney.
Yeah.
Because
So,
Sydney,
for-
is that what do you use in Nijmegen for the perspective of Dong? There's so many nature-based solutions in Nijmegen, so we mapped probably 1,000 or something. So yeah, how does this work relate to your practice then, or what kind of indicators do you use now, or what should be used, or?
Yeah, it was really interesting to see that that the indicator like legislation and policy was quite high.
Yeah.
And actually that's one I also like, because we used to do a more of a monetary we use more monetary indication that was just like water storage per cubic meter, how much does it cost?
Yeah.
And that one really destroys the purpose, well, one of the many other purposes of nature-based solutions. But next to that, so policy is still measurable, kind of, at least qualitative is measurable, as something is there or it's not. So that's one that we use. And what I also really liked that I see is that, and I was quite surprised, but that the external compilation did get did have my highest valuation of them all, and it actually got me thinking that we also have that here in Nijmegen, but we don't do this explicitly. Actually, when we're making a project and are, like you said, try innovative technologies, the first critic is always who's going to maintain it, and does the public knows how to use this? Do we have a company that can maintain this? What does the water board think of this new innovation? So it actually, for me, it hit the switch that we don't make this explicit in our municipality. It's not an explicit criteria per se, but we're always talking about it. So I
Yeah.
really like that this is shown in your study, and so I was actually kind of wondering how did you find that in those workshops? How did those workshops were set up, and how did the participants came to these kind of conclusions?
Thank you. I have many notes here to answer you, but also my personal reflections. So shall I take in a way that reflect what you said earlier on about the similar situation? I don't know if I'm happy to hear that or not happy. Part of me as a researcher, of course, I'm happy to hear. Okay, there's problems everywhere, but also part of me think I always want to find the best examples. So maybe Sweden here it didn't work, but in Netherlands or in German, Hanover, wherever they have a better kind of external collaboration mechanism or governance structures. So we could learn from by this type of talk or something. But that's the sad part, actually, it's the same. But also that kind of brings me, I think Flores knows, I usually like to see that the municipalities or practitioners, they know what they're doing. They know they have to select indicators, criteria, but there's not enough confidence when they start making this choice. So in my thesis, I always like, to say that there's a decision confidence is lacking. And sometimes when I'm at the conference, with this kind of ministry level talks, some people, the dynamic when they're in this kind of the panel discussion, some people speaks the most, actually has the most data in their hands, and wow, shift to this kind of the speakers with less confidence. Usually that means they're actually actively suggesting something that they're not sure if they should go, or there's a lack of data. So I think the confidence and also it doesn't mean the speaker who speaks the most with most confidence, that means they have the best quality of the data. As I mentioned earlier, the first couple of slides, that's actually one of the slides I usually kind of attacking them. It's like, okay, the data you have maybe is from the US, and sometimes in this, but I'm not usually very proactive in that way. But when somebody is too confident and too comfortable, I like to bring that, okay, we have to kind of sit back, kind of zoom out a little bit to understand what type of decision we're making. It doesn't mean all the things are black and white in that sense. And also when you mention how we find out or we kind of get this external collaborations. So that map is a little bit small, but the indicators from external collaboration, we have the interdepartment coordination, the partnerships and networks, the shared governance. That's actually the interesting indicator, but I kind of shaped it because it's from the Eleanor called the polycentric governance. I don't think any kind of practitioners will understand what is a polycentric governance, but then we kind of interpreted it in a way it's called the shared governance, because the nature-based solution, as I showed the governance map, it's actually shared, both shared by the actors in one phase, for example, in planning, but also shared along this kind of strategic management phases. So this is the type of shared governance that usually not surfaced very, very well when the nature-based solution design was planned. So they just think about engaged actors from the planning stage, from the construction stage, until some flood hit. Okay, who is responsible for this? Oh, we only responsible for this 10-year rain event, but this is like 20 or 100 rain event. Then they start hiring investigator too. Oh, this is on recording, right? Okay, but anyway, so it's anonymous talking. Then they start hiring investigators to find or get out of the blaming hole. So this is sort of like the part that if this has to be surfaced, that's also we carried out the study 3. It's like we surface this screening logic, to show you what is hidden. It doesn't mean we are making things more complicated, but it's like, what if you just think about it in the first place, then problem will be surfaced, and at least we thought about it, and there's some precautions or at least some notes in this kind of project plan. Okay, when this happened, this department is responsible. Even that
Yeah.
department is not yet in this table. Sorry, I'm carried too long now, but
No. It's great because you're going to my question now, but because you found exactly the things that we see in practice, and to these workshops, you got this response from the participants, and I'm really astonished that you got that out of them by using these different criteria. So maybe I should read some of your paper for myself, because I'm really looking forward on how exactly you got them to those answers, because you got the right answers. That's
Thank you.
yeah, and of course the result itself is not that very optimistic, because it's remaining a problem. But what is making me optimistic is that apparently those participants had the same problem and want to deal with it, and that's why it got so high. So that's a good thing. Yeah, no, very nice.
Thank you for this. And in short, I'm, the study too, if you want, we use the semi-structural interview. And actually, it's a Dutch kind of a really famous code transition theory here in Netherlands. So we use that as a multi-level perspective to understand different type of the barriers, the macro level, and also the best worth methodologies also from Netherlands. So see, this is very transferable cross countries contest. So
yeah, nice.
Guys are ahead.
Absolutely. Any other questions, Charnay or Sietske, maybe? We're all clear?
Yeah, maybe I can just ask on you had a slide on the co-benefits of nature-based solutions. Did your study also include quantifying those benefits, or is it just determining what the co-benefits are? I mean, like Sydney also mentioned monetary values. Is it possible to add monetary values to those type of unintended co-benefits of nature-based solutions? The ones that you were addressing specifically? Yeah. I mean, some of them is quite broad, right? But if you, for instance, look at air quality, something that's measurable, and maybe how that translates into a value.
Thank you for the question. This is a really good question. Actually, this slide is from the UNA lab. So I used to usually showcase, besides the technical function, there are way more multifunction to think. But also, if you look at this slide, that from our side, we also have multifunctionality in this, but we're mostly talking about the function from the stormwater facility per se. So yes, some of our indicators cover those, but of course, there are many type of frameworks that cover all type of multifunctionality, and how to measure them. I mentioned earlier, it's a future work because we have 40 indicators. Even one indicator, just this interdepartmental collaborations, we don't even know how to measure and what is the correct way to not put data onto it. So sometimes I think I usually in the debate with my supervisors, it's like, if we have to put a number, I think Flores mentioned as well, it's like, if you need to put in a number, it somehow means you quantifying something. But this type of governance factors, you have to keep the balance very soft. Especially there, if we made up something with numbers that works for one case studies, we just need to keep the skeleton of it. The flesh and everything needs to rebuild again in another context. So the data part or the numbers are one of the very interesting, the next step we will go into, and we're aiming to do that very soon.
Okay.
So I don't know if I have answered your question correctly.
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
Also,
you nailed actually one of the most discussion points during the fence as well. Yeah, should we put numbers? Is it an indicator or a checklist? And as soon as for some people, numbers can make it more clear, but mostly it can damage some stuff as well, because people can be demotivated. Because I had the famous rule 330 300, right? If it's about greening cities, it's explained in different ways. That's one, and also for some that's clear and it really provokes action because they can put it on a map. It's more visual, but if you don't understand what's actually doing, you might do the wrong thing. Because planting a tree, a young tree is not a grown tree. There are different types of trees. It depends on the location. There's so much more that some of these are very difficult to scale. And I was always against numbers, but actually I feel that some numbers, also for bioswales, saying it has to be empty in 2 days, it helps people as well. But it's a certain type of people, but also, is it about safety? Is it about getting the storage volume? Is it about mosquitoes? There's so many different views on it for that one number. So I think with that question you nailed it on the head. Charney, that was really Is it indicators? Is it smart? Is it a checklist? How does it help? And the main goal is, of course, come to climate action, and that's different for a lot of people. Yeah. But I would be itchy, the future work, as you say, to see what kind of numbers are used at different places. So in Sweden, there are some numbers. And also in the Netherlands, there are actually a lot of numbers. And how is that for Germany? How is that for Belgium? Or, can we make sense of it? Yeah.
Oh, yeah, exactly that is one of the issues. The discussion is very old, but what I really like that we do see is that we're going to interchangeable to exchangeable indicators, and then the numbers itself might change a bit, but at least we know we're talking about the same things, and that's actually I think that's shown in these studies as well. And I really like the example that the technical innovation got really low, but it was hidden. And that's of course one where you can put numbers on, right? Usually, but this was hidden in another indicator. So those numbers should actually be related to each other. That's something for further studies. But I think you can make like the quantitative part of the nature-based solutions or technical innovations. You can make it qualitative to talk to the other people, and put numbers on some qualitative stuff, like just a ranking or with an MCA. Then it helps to talk with the more technical people in that kind of area, because we're always thinking like, okay, we should do this kind of quantification or use this indicator, but for another person the indicator is not as important, so the number isn't the same. And I think it's really nice that this kind of studies bring it a bit more together.
Yeah. This is a really good question, and I haven't mentioned something to Flores, on my defense is like there actually are some kind of the social or kind of high tech, I would call methods, because now the indicators or the qualitative indicators are more and more pronounced in the impact assessment arena. If you read ISO or now with the latest article from Impact Risk, all 2 in 10 at least will say, okay, how to use qualitative manner to, for example, generate the recreational value, because recreational value is very, very kind of hard to say, because in the normal case, now I have to show the normal case, is like before they implemented the tryout, they thought, okay, we should make it we call it active recreational. People do ping pong, kind of playing sports and play the big chess, on the ground. But however, after the tryout, the neighborhoods, the private owners who has the rain gardens, they start complaining. It's too loud, because there are certain people that appreciate static, kind of silent recreational values. And that's super interesting. And also one of the kind of peer researchers from SLU, he was doing the child or kind of a teenager mentality. So one of his study, I still remember, I couldn't forget my whole life. It's like, some of the nature-based solution create the value for being alone, sad, being alone and being sad.
Yeah.
I was like, that was me. You know, I would never thought about when I was young. I was living under somebody's roof. I need some place, and you know, to just be myself, to gather myself, to put it up, and I need to place to be sad. And this type of values, you know, maybe it's too individual, but how to kind of collect them and how to kind of put them into the way that can be normalized in the decision. Okay, we have to do the trade-off now. Now we have to give up on something. But how to highlight this out in the decision making actually is very interesting. Next step, you know, if we're still gonna do the sustainability assessment or overall assessment, how we kind of play with these indicators. What's the value? Who weighs more? Who weighs less? And that's point, I think, you know, as you mentioned, the parameters and how we kind of frame the narrative is quite important. And of course, the study of the contest per se.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, you got a point now with putting numbers on. In the Netherlands, it's also about solitude and bewegen, spelen, ontmoeten, eenzaamheid. Those are the things that you described. So they're actually in policy as well, and no numbers here. And how to assess that will be very, very difficult. Yeah, it's good that you didn't put it in your PhD. Otherwise, you were not a doctor now.
Maybe the postdoc.
Yeah. So maybe we should close up slowly if there are no urgent matters, right? Yeah. Thanks again. It's really of interest, and I think, as I said before, you get the regards of your Dutch friends like Joey Koning and Frans van der Ven, of course, that are quite happy to see the recording, and also a lot of PhD students in the climate cafes that are here can learn from your method. You really described it in how you fit in 3 papers to a great story. So really great. Yeah. So for next week, we're gonna be that's gonna be in Dutch, because it's gonna be about the GWL-terrein. So that's how Dutch you can be, the gemeentelijke waterleiding in Amsterdam. And there are actually the longest citizen neighborhood, as you call, car-free. For 32 years, the inhabitants actually take care of their own public space, a bit together with the municipality, of course, but they are quite sustainable in the sense of also 32 years of flushing toilet with rainwater, which is a lot of debate in the Netherlands, and a lot of projects are failed in that way or removed, so to say. So that's quite interesting. And we're going to start with a short video. I went to the neighborhood with Jan Willem. He lives there for the 32 years. It's really about his story, about the neighborhood, how he see it changed, how he feels the maintenance of the public space should be. And he actually has a plan for the future of that neighborhood, what he wants to be changed, and how he's going to do that with all those inhabitants that have different views, and how that make it sustainable. So I'm not going to talk more, but it's a video, and we're going to ask him questions about it. So that's next week. And then, we also, okay, next week. Yeah. Right? Yeah, we have a busy agenda. Yeah. So with a lot of things.
I guess I'll kind of rewatch the clips with the subtitles.
That might be easier with the subtitles on, and that will be great. But a great story after the Kersertuin that we did also, and Eva Langsmeer in the past. So, but that's next week. Dr. Dong, it was a great pleasure to see you again, and I really wish you all the best. All right. Have a great evening.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.
Ja, leuk.